He was sitting in his chair, the one he always used after dinner, a soft recliner near the television. They found him there, still, eyes closed, hands resting quietly. Nothing violent, nothing dramatic, just stillness. The kind of stillness that doesn't ask for attention but leaves a weight behind. The television was still humming. His robe was open. It looked peaceful, but to me, it told a story. One I've seen too many times. There wasn't a heart attack, no fall. The coroner wrote it off as natural causes. But as a doctor who's worked with men for over 4 decades, I've learned to see the subtler signs. What happened to him wasn't just age. It was a quiet, unraveling, slow, invisible slide that began long before that evening. You see, as men grow older, we often believe that stepping away from pleasure, especially self-pleasure, is a sign of maturity, dignity, control. We're taught that desire is something we grow out of, something we can live without. But that belief, it's doing more harm than we realize. I'm Dr. Thomas Leighton, a retired urologist. I've sat with steelworkers and professors, grandfathers and veterans, and many of them carry the same silent burden. The unspoken changes happening inside their bodies when they stopped engaging with their own intimacy. If this message speaks to you, type 1. If you're unsure, type 0. Either way, thank you for listening. Let's talk about what really happens when you stop masturbating in old age, and more importantly, what you can still do about it. The first man who opened my eyes to this wasn't in a textbook. He was one of my earliest patients. Early 70s, sharp dresser, clear eyes, but behind the humor, he had a quiet desperation. He hadn't had an erection in nearly a year. It just stopped, he said. One day everything felt normal. The next, it didn't. That story repeats itself again and again. Most men assume it's just aging, but let me put it plainly. Your sexual function isn't like a light switch, it's like a muscle. Use it, or you lose it. Physiologically, the penis depends on regular circulation oxygen, blood flow, nerve stimulation to maintain its integrity. When a man stops stimulating it, especially after 60, the vascular tissues begin to stiffen. Fibrosis sets in. Nerve sensitivity dulls. What used to be a reliable function slowly fades not out of failure, but out of neglect. It's no different than if you put your leg in a cast for 6 months. Take it off, and you'll struggle to stand. The muscle atrophies. The coordination vanishes. The same is true for sexual function. Without use, the system weakens silently. And when it goes, it doesn't come with a bang. No alarms, just subtle signs. Morning erections disappear. Sensitivity drops. Stimulation no longer feels the same. Even medication loses its effectiveness. I've had men come into my office, eyes wide with fear, asking, "Can I get it back?" Sometimes, yes. With therapy, with time. But other times, we're too late. And that's the hardest part, because it didn't have to be that way. No one told them that by abstaining entirely, they were slowly letting a part of themselves shut down. Now, let's be clear, this isn't about sexual obsession. This is about maintaining vascular health, nerve health, identity, confidence. It's about reminding your body, once a week, maybe twice, that this function still matters. What you don't use, you start to lose. That truth hits harder as the years go by. And the fallout isn't just physical. It creeps into self-esteem, into relationships, into how a man carries himself. I've seen it. The slumped shoulders, the quiet embarrassment, the look of someone who's losing connection not just with others, but with himself. But most men don't realize that sexual function is only the first domino. What comes next hits even deeper. Hormones. Let me walk you through it. It often starts with something small. He sleeps more, has less motivation, stops walking as much, doesn't feel as sharp, his appetite changes, his laughter feels forced. In my office, I've heard every explanation: bad sleep, stress, age. But beneath it all, time and time again, we find one common thread: testosterone. Now, it's true that testosterone decreases with age. That's biology. But what most men don't know is how that decline accelerates when sexual stimulation disappears entirely. Regular arousal and release, especially in the form of masturbation, sends signals to the brain that keep your hormonal rhythm alive. Dopamine rises, the hypothalamus fires up. Your testicles, even at 70, get the message, stay in the game. When that rhythm is broken, when the system goes quiet for too long, the message becomes, we're done here. The body scales back. Hormone production dips. And with it, vitality disappears. We're not just talking about low energy. We're talking about losing focus, losing strength, losing your voice, and sometimes losing the will to keep going. I remember one man, retired firefighter, salt of the earth kind of guy. After his testosterone dropped, he told me, "Doc, I look in the mirror and I don't recognize the guy staring back. That wasn't vanity, that was grief." And it was preventable. If he'd known earlier, if somebody had told him that what he'd been taught to be ashamed of was actually a key to his stability, his power, his spark, his life might have looked different. Hormones don't just affect how you feel. They affect your heart, your bones, your brain. Depression rises. Cardiovascular risk increases. Fragility creeps in. But here's the good news. Consistent, respectful intimacy even alone can preserve more than you think. If you're finding this helpful, or you're just starting to think differently about your health after 60, consider hitting the subscribe button. That way, you won't miss future insights made just for men like you. And if this resonates, go ahead and type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. I read every single one, and they help shape what comes next. Because this isn't just about sex, it's about staying whole. Now, let's talk about a consequence most men feel but rarely mention. It's not about performance or drive, it's about discomfort. A dull, dragging ache low in the pelvis. A nagging urge to urinate, even when the bladder's nearly empty. Waking up 3-4 times a night just to relieve yourself. This isn't just aging. It's not just one of those things. In many cases, it's something far simpler: prostate congestion. You see, the prostate isn't a passive organ. It's a living, working gland. It produces seminal fluid, and that fluid is meant to be released, flushed, moved through the body as part of a natural rhythm. But when ejaculation stops, when sex and masturbation fade completely from a man's life, something happens. That fluid stays, it builds, and over time, it thickens. Pressure increases. Inflammation begins. I've treated hundreds of men who thought they had bladder problems or terrified about prostate cancer. But after a few careful tests, what we found was congestion, swelling, irritation from months, sometimes years of inactivity. One man in his late 60s came in convinced he had a serious condition. Frequent urination, lower back pain, discomfort every time he sat for more than an hour. When I asked about his sexual activity, he shook his head. "Haven't done that in years, Doc." Didn't see the point anymore. But the body doesn't just stop needing what it used to. The glands don't close up shop just because you hit 65. They keep producing, and when they're not emptied naturally and regularly, they turn against you. In many cases, the solution isn't medication. It's not a surgery. It's movement, ejaculation. That simple, natural act that helps the body clear itself. When neglected, it can lead to chronic prostatitis, a painful, frustrating condition that's difficult to treat and even harder to live with. And there's something even more serious. Inflammation left unchecked may raise your risk for prostate cancer. I'm not making wild claims. A respected study out of Harvard found that regular ejaculation roughly 21 times per month was linked with a significantly lower risk of developing prostate cancer. Why? Because the body was clearing waste, moving toxins, preventing buildup in a sensitive gland. And yet when I share this with men, they often look away, embarrassed. They've spent a lifetime being told that pleasure is indulgence, that intimacy is for youth. But what if we've gotten it all backwards? One patient of mine, 70, widowed, lived alone, came in with a swollen prostate and high PSA levels. He hadn't been sexually active in over 2 years. "I didn't feel the need," he told me. "Thought that part of my life was over." We talked. I explained how the gland worked, how neglect, not age, was causing his discomfort. With a little effort, some new habits, some trust in his body, he turned things around. Avoided a biopsy, avoided further inflammation, and most importantly, he started feeling like himself again. Because this isn't about lust. It's about relief. It's about staying whole, keeping systems moving the way they were designed to move. Now, I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. That physical symptoms were the only thing we need to worry about. But there's one last consequence that runs even deeper. It's not something you see in lab work. It doesn't show up on a chart, but you feel it, quietly, slowly, a disconnection from yourself. It starts subtly. You stop engaging with your body. You stop noticing it. You stop feeling much at all. Joy feels distant. Excitement fades. You start to believe that maybe this is just what getting older feels like. But it's not. Not entirely. You see, self-pleasure, when approached with respect and intention, isn't just physical. It's emotional, neurological. It reminds the brain that pleasure is possible, that you're still alive, still human, still worthy of care and connection. The chemicals released during climax, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, aren't frivolous. They're foundational. They regulate mood, ease anxiety, support emotional balance. When men cut themselves off completely, they risk more than prostate pain or hormone loss. They risk emotional numbness, isolation, even depression. I've met men who used to be vibrant, funny, charming, full of life. And over time, I watched the spark fade. Not because they were sick, but because they forgot how to connect with themselves. They stopped looking in the mirror, stopped smiling at their own reflection, stopped believing they mattered. One man, a retired postal worker, told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Doc, I feel invisible, like I've been erased." And that broke me, because he wasn't alone. He was one of hundreds who'd come to believe that age meant invisibility. But it doesn't. It never should. Arousal, connection, pleasure, these are not childish desires. They're signs that your body is still working, that your heart still wants to feel. When you give up that part of yourself, especially in solitude, you risk more than physical decline. You risk forgetting who you are. And I need you to hear this. It's never too late to return. It's never too late to rediscover what makes you feel alive. You don't need a partner to feel human. You don't need permission to reconnect with your own body. What you need is the courage to care again, to look in the mirror and say, "I'm still here." If you're still watching this, if this has stirred something inside you, type 1 in the comments. If you're unsure, type 0. I read every single one. And they remind me why I started speaking out in the first place. Because no man deserves to fade in silence. There's a belief many older men carry, and I've heard it whispered in my office more times than I can count, that intimacy, desire, even pleasure are things you outgrow. That after a certain age, your body is supposed to quiet down. That dignity means letting go of that side of yourself. But after 40 years of truly listening to men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, I can tell you, that belief is not wisdom. It's surrender. And it's robbing far too many of the very things that make life rich, meaningful, and worth waking up for. I've seen it firsthand, the gradual disconnection, the slow fade of vitality. Men who once laughed from the belly now offering only polite smiles. Men who once held their shoulders back now staring at the ground. Not because they were broken, but because they believed they had to turn off that part of themselves in order to age with grace. But that belief is a lie. You've heard what happens when you stop masturbating in old age. It's not just about lost function, it's about the slow collapse of systems that depend on regular engagement. Sexual, hormonal, emotional. We've talked about how neglect can lead to erectile decline, how, without stimulation, the tissues harden, the nerves quiet, the body forgets what it once knew. We explored how testosterone can plummet not simply because of time, but because your body thinks it no longer needs to produce it. That signal, it comes from silence, from giving up that biological rhythm your brain once danced to. We uncovered how prostate congestion, caused by inactivity, can slowly build until it brings pain, irritation, and even risk for cancer pain that could have been prevented with a habit as natural as brushing your teeth. And finally, we looked at the emotional cost, the erosion of self-recognition, that hollow feeling that creeps in when intimacy disappears. 7, the kind shared in solitude. When you no longer touch yourself, you begin to lose touch with yourself. These are not minor side effects. They are profound changes that alter how a man sees himself, feels in his body, and connects with the world around him. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to stay that way. Your body still remembers. Your nervous system still responds. Your hormones, even if dulled, can still be stirred with care and consistency. This isn't about trying to be 25 again. This is about preserving the dignity of being alive at 65, 75, or 85. There are steps you can take today: quiet, respectful steps to protect your health, restore your spark, and reconnect with yourself. Start simple. If it's been a while, don't rush. This isn't performance, it's permission. Permission to feel again. Permission to let your body speak to you in its own language. Create space for this, not as a guilty secret, but as a conscious act of care. A kind of therapy you give yourself, not out of vanity, but out of value. Because you are valuable. And if there's shame, I understand. It's been planted deep, watered over years by culture, silence, and outdated beliefs. But you can let it go now. You've earned the right to know what's true, that your health, your hormones, your sense of joy depend in part on this. I once had a patient, 78 years old, who told me he hadn't touched himself in over a decade. Felt silly, he said. Felt wrong. But after we talked, after he understood what was at stake, he made a small change. 1 night a week. Just him. Just peace. No shame. Months later, his energy was up. His sleep improved. His PSA stabilized. And perhaps most touching of all, he told me he started painting again. Something he hadn't done in years. That's the power of reconnection. It ripples through the body, through the mind, through the soul. Because this isn't about lust, it's about life. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you thought had been lost to time. They're still there, waiting. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you, not just for listening, but for honoring your own health enough to stay with me. You're not just watching a video. You're participating in a conversation that's long overdue, one that many men are afraid to have, but not you. You're here. And that means something. So let me leave you with this. You don't need to apologize for wanting to feel. You don't need permission to reclaim your vitality. You just need to remember that your body is not done giving, and you are not done receiving. If you're still here, it means you haven't given up. So please, don't. Click like if something in this message touched you, or share it with someone you love, someone who might be struggling in silence. And if you feel ready, just leave a 1 in the comments. That's how we keep this quiet conversation alive. And wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you're not alone.